Hello and welcome to Cloud Force Vibes. So I'm in here again playing around. I've got the new camera out and I want to have a closer look around with you guys. I've got some new stuff in both this tank and the small tank that we're going to showcase. I have some blooms we can look at. I've got some new moss we're going to take a closer look at, and just a whole lot of new growth and new things going on. I was fiddling with all my plants yesterday and I was putting lime on them. I swear by Espoma lime. It's organic lime, garden lime. I will show you that here in a few minutes. But I sprinkle a little bit in the pots. I sprinkle a little bit on the mounts. You can see, here's a good example of it. Right there. It's the pebbly looking stuff on the mount. And get it wet, it kind of melts right in. And what it does is it really helps to lower the raise the pH inside the mount, which is good because we all know that sphagnum moss will decrease the pH significantly, and that can cause some issues with your roots. So it also adds some calcium and some magnesium to it, which is always good for your orchids. Magnesium you can overdose, but calcium I don't think you can. I think it's one of the most important things for your plants, and I swear by it. Any form that you can give is better than none, but there are better forms than others. I will do a nutrition video here pretty soon. I know some people have asked for it, but I don't do much different than a lot of other people. I followed the advice of others, and that's how I got my plants to be this way, but I will be happy to run through that with you in another video. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a peek around. We'll start over here. This is the new red sphagnum moss. Here, let's get, that we've got, and I think it's starting to acclimate pretty good already. It's greening up in some spots really well. It hasn't really started to perk up yet per se, but it's definitely looking good. It's getting pretty green in a few spots up here, especially. The one down here isn't acclimating quite as quickly, but that one's going to be just fine, I'm sure. So let's back out of here. Oh goodness. Apparently my battery's almost dead, so we're going to have to continue this in just a few moments. Darn it. Okay, so we're back. I had to charge my batteries up. Well, battery up. That's the problem. I just got this camera and did not have, or do not have, any extra batteries at this time. I also, while I was waiting, went ahead and ordered a few more batteries so we don't have to deal with this ever again. It's a significant amount of time later, and we're going to do the best we can to salvage this day and salvage this video, but I do not have as much time as I did before, so here goes nothing. Anyhow, we looked at the moss already. Here, let's go ahead and cut this off so we're not huffing that. We still have the Valparaitii out. This thing is really, really doing well. Here, we'll talk about that a little bit. I just can't get over how nice these blooms are. It's my first species Val to bloom. I do need to, I think, get it off this mount and get it onto something bigger. When I had it at first, I mean, it was so tiny. That's some of the original leaves that were on it, the ones back there. And it has just gotten a lot bigger. So it needs something bigger and better and more sustainable for it. And I think it's going to get it soon. I've still got the Arangus here, my new one, the Harriotiana. On this mount, but it's not going to be there very soon. We'll go for a remounting video here very soon, and same thing here with this Trichoglottis atropurpurea. They're doing very well. I have them up here on this shelf right in front of the window, getting as much light as I can give them, but still a bit diffused. Everything else up here is going really well. I have some good news about this. This is my one and only Renanthera, and it has a new root on it, so we have another new root coming down here. I just put this thing in this basket not very long ago, and it's really, really a neat plant. I'm really, really happy about it. It has another root down here creeping along the sides, that's come out since I put it in this basket, but I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be a really neat addition to this grow tent if I can ever get it to bloom. I did notice here my brand new Laelia lilliputana. It's got a new growth coming right up here. I don't know if you can see it. It's just starting right there. And then some new roots as well, so that's exciting. It's acclimating well. Hopefully we can see that thing bloom here in the near future. The Sophronides cernua is also doing really well. I've got lots of new growths. This latest growth is actually pushing out a pretty good sized leaf, so that plant's starting to mature finally, and that's great news. Another one of my newer orchids, this is Laelia pumila, and this plant I noticed the other day is also going crazy with new growths. So we've got one coming up the side here, which is great news. This plant's going to push on quite nicely, and we have another one coming on down there, just in between those two new roots. So this plant is growing well. Two new growths. Hopefully we can see that thing bloom sometime here soon. So this is our Dendrobium lodogessii, and it has a really nice new growth coming on down here. It has a keiki forming off the tip of this, and it just recently pushed up this new growth up here at the base of the plant. So that's 3 new growths off of that. I'm really excited. I got this thing to bloom this spring, and man, what a flower. I'll put a picture up of that, but I think I've shown that before when I did my All Things Dendro update. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see more growth coming on this plant. It's a beautiful plant. It's variegated form, and the blooms are even more spectacular. Now I'm living right next to that. Gotta be careful now. We have this Encyclia tampensis, and I am excited because I don't know if you can see that or not, but coming right up the middle of this plant is a really big, nice flower spike, and right behind that we have another one. So 2 spikes on this. Should be a really nice show. This is a native United States epiphyte, so this is going to be my first one to bloom, fingers crossed, and I just couldn't be happier to see it. It's the Florida butterfly orchid in normal terms, but Encyclia tampensis is the scientific name, and that's really big news. That's going to be a first-time bloomer for me, and I am thrilled about that plant. I have another Encyclia down here. This is Encyclia bractescens. I've shown this once in an update, and that growth right there in the middle, that has a spike that is now starting to form. Something happened here with my new growth, and I just can't get it to stop dying. So it gets this brown, I cut it back, I put cinnamon on the wound, and you know, it just keeps on dying back. So something's wrong. I need to maybe get it off this mount and see what's going on with it, but this plant has never been the happiest plant. I've had some issues with it, but it's still trying to bloom. I'm debating whether or not I take the bloom spike off, but I really want to see these blooms. So that's Encyclia bractescens, and I'm just hoping to God it hangs in there and we can go ahead and see that here real soon. This is really exciting news. I have a Dendrobium here that is pushing out a really nice new growth. That's Dendrobium unicum, and it's starting to get roots on it now, so I'm really excited about that as well. This is one of my first like cane type Dendrobiums like this. I have the Dicyoides down there, but they're still very different plants, both of them, so this is big news. The leaves come out kind of purpley, and then they change to this nice green color. Really interesting plant, but rather new as well. I haven't showed it off much, and yeah, it's growing great, so that's good news. Over here we have another one of our very new acquisitions. This is the Thrixspermum acuminatissimum. So if you look closely, you'll see a brand new leaf starting to form right there at the very top. which is good news. Nothing on the lower growth yet, which is under there. Well, now we're out of focus. Good job. But it is growing strong. They're both growing new roots, and I'm very, very excited about that plant because what a neat plant. It has a really cool bloom again. I've showed it during the unboxing, but I'll throw another picture up of that because it's definitely worth it. It's a cool plant. So it's growing pretty well. I keep it up here. It gets some bright light, but very little to no sun. It's kind of behind the Bellina from the window, so we don't have to worry about that at all. The Phalaenopsis Bellina has a great new growth while we're talking about it. New leaf forming here. And I don't know what it's doing, but if you look close down in this leaf joint, we've got something. Not sure if that's a root or it's potentially trying to spike. It pushed out this spike in the fall, which promptly stalled and has not done a darn thing. It pushed a bud that blasted, and I haven't been able to save it. So that's the Bellina that I have, and it's been a rather sad plant for a while, but I think it's starting to come around. I put it on this mount and it's immediately starting to act better. It had a second plant, a second growth, or perhaps a seedling, sibling or whatever, in the pot with it, and I put it on a mount as well, and we had the same immediate reaction. It started to push out a leaf, and it seems very happy now. Let's go over here. This is kind of big news. This is my Bulbophyllum maximum, and this is by far one of my largest, actually my largest Bulbophyllum, and it's doing some cool stuff. It's actually growing new growths, and these new growths on this plant, I don't know if you can see that or not, but they have a really neat color and texture to them. They're spotted purple and green growths, and they're kind of papery, and they're neat, and they're popping up all over. This thing has one there. If you come up in the plant, it's got another one here starting to form. I think the one next to it has one coming as well, just poking through. It's got a new growth over here, and I know it's got one starting farther down here as well. So this plant's going to get much larger again, and hopefully I can get the winter right for this plant, and we can have a nice show next year and get some blooms out of it, because it's got a really weird bloom spike with really weird blooms. They supposedly smell like death. It's one of those Bulbophyllums, but I think hopefully it'll be worth it. It needs a dry winter rest. It comes from Africa, in an area that has a real dry season, so if I can get that right this coming winter, there's absolutely no reason we shouldn't be able to see some blooms next year. Let's see. Let's get down here. We don't look down here enough. So, this is my Paphiopedilum, my one and only. It's been doing absolutely jack for quite a while, and despite my best efforts and my best treatment, it hasn't really done anything. So, I have recently moved it over here. It's getting more light, and voila, it is moving back into growth. It's got a new fan pushing on close to us, and the second youngest fan back there is actually pushing up a growth from the center. I repotted it pretty recently. This is Repot Me Imperial Path and Frag mix, and I put it in a tall pot that I made. I bought a Phalaenopsis in that pot. I drilled some holes for better aeration and stuck it down here, and it seems to finally be happy. So I am thrilled about that. I would love to see these blooms again, and yeah, so I'll throw a picture up of that, and we'll go ahead and move on. Up here, this is the Dendrophylax fawcettii on the Spanish moss, and it's doing really well. It's still growing nicely. The root tips never died off. They're growing along. And my other Dendrophylax up here, the Lindinii and Sallii cross, it is progressing very nicely as well. New root growth all over the place, and I'm very hopeful for that one to survive. Now, I think it's going to do just fine. So, other big news. This is a plant that you guys might have never ever seen. This, I'm going to come back a bit. This is my Maxellii or shepherdii, and this plant had very nice long leaves when I first got it. This is an original growth, and then last year produced these real sissy leaves right after I got the plant. This was an Acuminata purchase. It came with a pretty poor root system, but it's still an awesome plant, and I'm very pleased to say that finally, after all this time, we've got a nice root system forming, getting back there, clinging to the mound all through it, and all the new growths that have popped up recently. I mean, there's tons of them in there, and they are finally getting to what I would consider to be a decent size for this plant. So hopefully we can get this thing to flower. I have trouble flowering Maxillarias, and while we're on the topic, we can talk about my most infamous non-blooming plant in my entire collection. Supposedly an easy grower. I'd like to beg to differ a little bit. But this, right here, this monster, is my Maxellii tenuifolia. I've had this plant for a little over 2 years. I'm sorry, right about 2 years, at 2 years. And when I got it, it was just a pathetic little pitiful thing. And it has grown to be a really nice plant. It's got roots poking out all over the place, doing its thing. I water it from the top. I get the whole plant wet. I've heard that helps it. It has just exploded with growths all over the place. And no matter what I do with this plant, I cannot get it to bloom. I gotta slap it around a little bit or something maybe. But anyhow, I am still very much curious as to why it will not bloom, because like I said, it is massive. It is really a big plant, very much adult. I just recently moved it up to give it more light. It might end up getting traded out with the the Brassanth Maikai that I have right here, and going in this real highlight spot, because I know they like a lot of light. But I had it on that wall before, and I started to get some real yellow leaves. So I guess there's a real delicate balance you have to find with these, because it definitely gets the conditions it likes. I mean, obviously it grows like a maniac, but I just cannot get this thing to bloom. And then another Maxellaria that I have, another monster. This is Maxellii Parkeri, and I got this from Ecuminata as well. Another really sad plant when I got it, root-wise. It was really big. This is some of the original growths. You can see they're a little bit beat up. But all the growths that I've pushed out, they've been really nice. They're really healthy. I've got more new growth coming. I've got like 4 or 5. And all these roots that this thing has pushed out over the last 2 years. But I just can't seem to get it right. I've been growing this in a real shady spot. But I just recently moved this up as well to try to give it more light. It does not like the sun, but what I do give it is a lot of bright artificial light, and I'm just hoping that we can see some blooms off of this as well. I'll throw another pop-up up of this bloom and the shepherdii so you guys can see what we're waiting for. So that wraps us up here. We're gonna turn this back on, and we're gonna close sesame and have a look over here at the small tank. Now, nothing's changed. I do have a couple new plants, and one real special thing. It is that time of year. Now, we talked about my bulbophyllum the other day, that I'm very excited about, so we can start with that. Now that we've got the new camera, hopefully you guys can see this better. And see my spike progressing. So that's it right there. I'm gonna be real careful. Right in front of my finger, and it is growing. We're gonna have a bloom, I think. I hope. So that's Bulbophyllum speciosum. And I was going through here looking at some stuff. Like I said, I got a real intimate close look at all my plants the other day, yesterday, and I got to this guy. This is Restrepia muscifera, and I had this moment where I saw something clinging to the back of a leaf. Oh gosh, you can't see that. I'm gonna have to get this plant out. Give me a moment. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. It's got a bunch of new growths coming, new roots. We kind of looked at this the other day about some aerial roots on a Restrepia coming, which makes me happy. That's all thanks to the humidistat that keeps us at 89 or 91%. But we're going to go ahead and lean this thing up. We're going to come behind here and we're going to take a look, because we had something hiding. That is a bud. This species does not get a very long spike. It actually blooms right off the back of the leaf. So I almost missed it, and I'm really happy I did not. So this plant is gonna hopefully grace us with its presence very soon. It looks like it's starting to catch its form. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, but soon we're gonna get to see this plant bloom for the very first time. And that's another exciting one. So I got that from New World Orchids. She is out of Michigan, and she has some really great plants. She's the lady who specializes, let's get back in focus, sorry. She specializes in Neophoenicias, Dendrobium maniliforms, other Japanese plants, but she has a really great selection of other plants as well. I got my Poroglossum from her. I have a whole bunch of different plants from her. She does great. Kristen is her name. She's awesome. Let's see, other news. This is our Masdevallia winlandiana. I went ahead and I mounted it on cork bark with live sphagnum moss. This is a combination of our new red and some of our green, and we're just going to see how it does. When I unpotted it, it split up into 3 divisions. So what we ended up with was another division that I mounted the same way right over here. So now we have 2. One of these might get gifted out, but we'll see. I got to get it established first. This one had the weakest root system, but this one over here actually had a really nice root system. So I'm pretty pleased with it. I think it's going to do well, and yeah, it's living in here. I decided to go with it in the small tank because of the humidity, and I'm really hoping it becomes a happy plant fast. So I'll keep you guys updated. And then our new Lepanthes, I mounted it as well. I got it out of that pot. They just do not do well in pots for me. And I did the same thing here. I mounted it with a little bit of the live red moss. So we'll see how that does. That's my first Lepanthes to get mounted with live moss, and I'm really excited about it. So new blooms. We took a quick look at this in my test video, but I'm not sure how many people actually made it through that, so we'll have another quick look. This is, now I gotta be careful. Oop. This is Lepanthes gargoyla. First time bloomer for me. Really special little Lepanthes, and I just couldn't be happier about it. So I waited a long time to see that bloom, and it has definitely lived up to its expectations. That's just about all I have for you guys. I really appreciate you tuning in. I really wanted to shoot a real video on this camera and see what kind of a difference it made. I am working on making it better day by day, so hopefully the quality's better. Hopefully the audio's better. It sounded a whole lot better during my test video. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you're staying safe, and until next time, happy growing.